Chào cô ạ.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, and I'm very glad to meet you finally. Met you on the web. That's not
Yes.
quite the same.
It's been 2 months,
Yeah.
and I can't believe you had the opportunity to come over to Vietnam, and I'm very honored to be able to meet you. I read about you. People give you this title of being the woman who understands Vietnam the most, and I am, today hear you was talking Vietnamese, just like a native person. And so I really want to know about you. What inspires your love for Vietnam?
I think it's because what I know is that I don't know anything.
Socrates.
Right. I don't know anything. I'm always learning, and that's what's fun. That's what's interesting. And I'm privileged because I have some very long-term friends, decades, 40 colleagues,
Yeah.
40 years, 50 years. One colleague took me around Hanoi during the war, right? So right at the end. So we go back now more than 50 years. I will see her next week. She's in the South now. But,
Very busy
and we
schedule.
work together for years, so I'm always learning, and that's fun. And
So-
meeting new people and having this base of people who are really family for me.
So your love for Vietnam it just comes very naturally.
Yes,
the
yes,
long-term
because
friendship.
I'm in my 80s now, so most of my life has actually been connected to Vietnam. But I didn't set out to do that. It's what happened, and so now it continues. And I'm lucky to be in sufficient good health and able to do that. And it's fascinating. I meet new people, and I learn this little piece, that little piece, and I see that it connects over here. Because I do look as a foreigner, and so I see some things that my Vietnamese friends don't see, and of course they see many things I don't see.
The exchange in perspective. Yeah, I really enjoy the process of learning as well, listening to stories, and that really opens up my mind. Maybe that's why I did this writing competition, Legacy in Ink, and I really want to know, other than your love for Vietnam, why did you accept my invitation to become a judge for the competition?
It's daunting.
It's daunting.
It's very daunting. Right?
Even in your
Very daunting,
80s.
yes, because I think any kind of writing is very difficult. How can you judge? But I look at it. It's all important and all interesting, and it's a chance. I assume, but I don't know. These are probably younger writers, and the writers whom I've known and been in touch with are older. They're more of my generation. They're a little bit younger or older, and so these are new voices. And reaching out, and it's a great chance for me to learn. I think it's a great chance for them to learn.
Yes.
We try, and part of what intrigues me about what you're doing is the workshops that are with it. So it's a chance for the writers to develop collegial relationships with each other and with others, and so it's a sharing, and that's a community, and we'll get from them, they'll get from their own work, it'll get much richer and deeper.
Yeah. That's actually exactly the spirit I want to bring for the Legacy in competition, because I think if it's just a writing competition, it does not deliver as much long-term impact. The reason why last year I organized Camp Lumina, which is an interdisciplinary camp on philosophy, literature, and culture, is because writing needs community, just as any discipline. And that's exactly the spirit I want to bring forward, the sense of community, because I think writing, just like any other subjects or discipline, you need a community. And especially for writing, it's about voices, it's about listening to stories and exchanging stories. So building this community where they can be each other's companions in the future. I think that's one of the greatest gifts that the writing competition can bring. The workshops, the organization, the reaching out to the judges, definitely very difficult. It's a long-winded process. But I think after every workshop, people, like the participants, engage really like enthusiastically. They said they learn a lot. They have a lot more inspiration, and perhaps if they don't, at least they have this sense of community that everyone shares a love for writing. And I think that's exactly what Legacy in Ink here is for. And that goes back to our original mission as well. Why do we focus on heritage? It's because now, in the time of globalization, where everyone goes to different places, different countries, but I think we always need an anchor that Vietnam means something to us. And that sense of belongingness, I think, is very important. Especially now, just in one more week is the 50th anniversary of the war, of the end of the war. It's very important that we remind ourselves who we are to one another, so that we don't let the war, we don't have this thing unnecessarily happens.
You have a shared history. That history is also shared with people who are ethnic Vietnamese who are living across the world.
Yeah.
And now in my country, I'm American, we have many young people who are ethnic Vietnamese who actually do not know their own ethnic language.
Yes.
And that happens again and again and again with different ethnic groups that come to my country or come to any country. The young generation always wants to learn the language of the hosting country and meld in, and they will actually repudiate their heritage language. It's very common. So don't take that on to Vietnamese. It's very, very common. It's just the process. But then they begin looking back and what are the stories behind and what is the history? And we are quickly losing it. It's a very modern time and everything moves very fast, but we are losing the people who were active in those periods. It's a very interesting time, no matter what side people were on. All kinds of stories, and to understand what happened and the effect on people's lives, we need a series of individual stories. When you get those, you get a whole. And you get some overt decisions, but you know how different people's lives were affected. And many of us are caught in a wash of life. We don't necessarily have that many choices. We might think we do, but maybe we don't. And certainly at wartime, people did not have choices.
Yeah.
All sides. So it's and now that we are at a distance of peace, and I do make the point that the war did not end in 1975. Peace only returned in 1919. First year of peace in this
when
country.
gun falls silent.
It's all finished,
Yeah.
End of 1989. So 1990 is the first year of peace.
Yes.
In anybody's memory. That means somebody who was 90 years old in 1990, it's the first time they knew the real meaning of that word, and of Vietnamese people. And that's a colossal tragedy, of course. So that we need to recognize that, and it also accounts for this extraordinary development. It's the combination of doi moi and peace. Right?
Yes.
You build up, and it's not going to be knocked down until you knock it down and build it better. People do that. They take the houses down and they build a bigger house or whatever. But that's different from building your life and then having it destroyed. You're choosing to rebuild it and make your house better or whatever it is. That's a very, very different process. And that's why you have the zest in this country. And I think the value that we have now with the young generation of writers is, so what are the core values? What's really important in all of that? what's really going on between ordinary people in that process. What are lives like?
Yes. I think that is well documented and expressed through writing. I think that's something that will leave a legacy of the heritage to carry it forward in the young voices who now get to live in peace. Their worldview would be different. I think I want to see in these writings a sense of interconnectedness, with the heritage, but also with the communities that they define that they belong to, right? If they are Vietnamese in the foreign countries, they can define community differently. It's the spirit of us, that's the theme of the competition. Yeah. Yeah, I look forward to it.
And you do have this, it's a very different world now because we have the internet.
Yes.
Which is of course positive and sometimes negative too, but it means we have instantaneous communication with the people we are close to. Years ago when I was working with Vietnam, nothing. I could not even mail a letter to Vietnam. No postal service with your country, anybody in your country. That everything went by somebody hand carrying it in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Right. Because the war had ended or some of it was still going on and no peace. And now we can even talk by telephone and without cost. Ooh, that used to be. It used to be $25 for 1 minute, and that would be like $100 now for 1 minute on the telephone. So you didn't go telephoning anybody. Well, now it's all the time, right?
Yes.
So it's a very, very different way that we can communicate, but part of what happens is those communications get very, very short.
Yeah.
They're very, very crystallized. Right? And the value of literature is you're going deeper.
Yes.
Right? Whether you're writing it as a letter to someone or a short story, but the process of that writing is you're thinking more deeply than just answering the question.
I think so too. Before I organize the literary projects, I also write. And I think writing is, it's such a profoundly deep process of you being present with yourself and with the surroundings. It's a visceral feeling, kind of. I think that deep thinking is what allows me and perhaps others to discover themselves. I think the way you choose your imagery, your words, the metaphors, it can still describe the same situation, but the nuance is different. The nuance is what reflects your worldview. And I think this is what should be exchanged between everyone. We should, every story must be heard. Right. And that humanizes people.
So let me ask you, if I might, because now you have the collection of entries, right? And a large number, right? And short or long, some are poems, and some are short stories, but perhaps long. So that's a lot of material.
Yes.
Right? And now what?
Now, the first thing I will be doing is to send out an email for the participants, asking them if they give us permission to post it on our social media. I think there's one of the prizes that is the favorite, the favorite piece of writing. And we would post that on the internet, and then the one with the most interactions would win that award. Of course, we have the other awards that you, the judges, would be marking, but that's the first step, just to keep this engagement. Because I also want to, join in with the spirit of the anniversary at the end of the Vietnam War. I think this is a great way to celebrate the spirit of us, our heritage. So that's the first thing.
So you have a rather short deadline.
Yes, definitely.
Right?
Very short deadline.
Or at least for our first step of getting some of that up.
Yeah. Maybe I would be thinking maybe May 1st, May 2nd. Yeah.
English.
In English.
In English.
Right, in
In
Vietnamese.
English, right. So in Vietnamese, I'm even slower.
Oh.
Right. So,
No,
that's
I
all right.
understand.
That's
Yes.
the way I've lived. And I have something known as dyslexia. You turn to switch things around, so I have to go slowly so that they all stay in order. And that's so I'd be glad to do that, but I can't do it.
I understand.
Without sitting a while, and I would read it through quickly, and then I would go back and read it carefully, and because
I
it
understand.
deserves that.
Understand.
Right?
It gives
Whatever they've done deserves that care.
Yes.
And I think it's also the opportunity in all of this is, and maybe you can ask this of the people who are participating, how much, if at all, have they shown these pieces of work to anyone? Have they had any kind of response to it? I'm not sure you necessarily want to put that up there, on the web with their work, but I think it's interesting to know whether a piece of writing is something that a person's just finished and no one's seen it, so they haven't had any response to it, or in fact, lots of people have seen it. They're used to getting a response because it's as a writer, the writer feels fragile, right? And we are very prone to being rejected.
Yes.
Right? We send it out. We're lucky if we even get a response. I've sent out some potential to write things about Vietnam, no response at all, right? No response at all, although they say they will respond. They don't, right? Or you get back a one-sentence response, so sorry, this isn't appropriate for us, or something, right? And that's very common in terms of getting things published. The world's changed now because of the web, and in publishing, people, in my country at least, do what's known as self-publish. I have a close neighbor writer friend in Ohio who has brought out his own novels, and one of them he'll be sending to me on the web because he can't send it to me in print here. I can't get it in time. So we publish our own because it's so hard for the publishing companies. They take forever.
Yeah.
And they don't take very many new writers unless you're very famous. You have to be Michelle Obama or somebody, right? And then you get your book published. So that process of getting your work out and getting some response can be an intimidating one for a writer. And I think part of what you're doing here, or at least I think what we want to be doing, is lifting the writers up.
Exactly.
Right? So, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to say positive things, but you find the places in the work where it's really working.
Yeah.
And so they can see that. And I was fortunate to have good editors who helped me see how to do that. So you can see where it's really working well. And then you can see, and sometimes
the potential.
You can see the potential, and you can see the places where it's not working well. You either fix them, or maybe they don't belong. Maybe they're extra. Right? Or you were churning to get to a place, and then you finally got there, and you take off the part where you were churning to get there.
Yes.
And that's part of the writing process. And I think, all talking together about when the work is finished, it didn't come out all that way with most writers.
Yeah.
At least in my language. And one of the things I was just showing two retired museum directors, draft writing by Ho Chi Minh. He's one of your greatest writers.
Yeah.
Right? Political writing, poetry, he even did short stories back in the day. He did little plays, he did all kinds of writing. And his autobiography, when you look at the drafts, you can see he was churning around to get the right words. You can see it on the page.
Yes.
And that's really useful to understand that one of your very most famous writers, even in literature, his poems are wonderful, then he had to work at it.
Yeah.
It didn't come out fully formed. You see it printed, it's fully formed, but the process is
It's messy.
And I think that's part of this whole thing where we can talk about the process.
Yes.
And in English, one of the things we say is the writer's never finished. You never finish it. You abandon it. I come here to this publishing house to see my friend, the director, who has been my editor and still my editor, and I'm abandoning. I give him this manuscript.
Yeah.
But then I keep wanting to change this or that.
Keep
People give me another piece of information. I want to put it in. Right? I want to, oh dear, this is wrong. I just took something out. Right? Which I haven't told him about, but I think I should take it out. So there's a change, and that's what I mean by abandoning. Doesn't mean you give it up forever, but it's just like it's always a process.
Yes.
And in my country, at least, some of our famous writers, they have a book they've published, and it's published.
They keep working on it.
Or they keep adding something to
Yeah.
it, or they scribble on it, you know?
Yes.
So it's an ongoing process for us because we're always learning. And just to understand that, it doesn't come out fully formed.
Exactly.
You churn around, unless you're totally brilliant, like in English, Mr. Shakespeare.
Yeah.
It came out fully formed, but Mr. Ho Chi Minh, also brilliant. Brilliant minds, you know, modern times, churned around. You know, we can see that in some of his writing, where he crosses out words and chooses.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we're trying to emulate as
Yeah.
well. Even for like the shortlisted people, I also want them to have the feedback from the judges, just so they can work on it. Yeah. Maybe I'll just ask you two of the questions that she asks. Wait, hold on. What is the value of literature for the young writers or the young people in terms of emotions, or this is like sensing the aesthetics. Is there a better phrasing for that?
So I think it's
Wait, maybe we can redo that because
the value of literature is that it is so carefully thought, and it's thought from inside the mind, as opposed to, say, a film, also carefully thought, but it's visual and auditory. Right? Literature, you're reading it, you're reading dialogue, people are speaking or not, description, narration. It's all in words.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's some illustrations, but it's basically all from here, right? And you then, in your mind as a reader, paint your own pictures, right?
Yes.
And hear your own sounds with what the writer has created. So it's a much more complex form, and which is the reason if you look at films, many of them come from a short story, or they come from a novel, and they've been adapted.
Yes.
Very often that is the case, and for some of our major films, at least in my country, have come from some sort of a base document that was written, right? And then a person who is very visual for film then puts it, they put music with it, and it becomes quite a different work.
Yeah.
But its origins, and you talk to actors or listen to them interview, they always talk about if you've had a good script, and if it's, which is the text,
Yes.
right? If it's a good script, they can do a good film. If it's a bad script, and you have the most brilliant actors, they can't make a really excellent film.
Yeah.
Right? And when it's a good script, you can tell it when you see the film, because it's the dialogue, the characters are individual, and of course that's the actors too, but if the script is poor, which is the thought, the writing is the thought,
The root.
right? It's the root and the thought, and anything that you see that's film or concerts, lyrics to songs, right? That was thought, and then they heard it with music or whatever, but it's thought, right? And they get it down and they tinker and they change, but it's thought, and that's what literature is. it's clarified and distilled, and then from that we get other forms of art that come out of that.
What do you think? Oh, wait, thank you so much for the insight. I think I really love the relations that you bring with film and with music. I think a lot of the times when, a good film, it's actually the script,
Right.
the dialogue, the core, the essence of it.
That's the essence of it.
The essence of it,
Yeah.
The message that comes through.
Right.
It
And then,
is.
of course, you have the work of the director who's seeing all of that, but, and the actors, it's many people are working on it, but the story is the base of it. They're
Yes.
working off a really good story,
Yeah. Okay.
which is what you're collecting.
Yes. Mm.
And these are, I assume, well, who knows? We have to see, but these are modern voices. The story may be set any time.
Yeah.
And it could be, in space and time we're not at, or it can be way back in history, and who knows, right?
Yeah.
That's the imagination, that's the thought.
Modern voices.
Right.
I know you've been working a lot with the older generation writers. Do you read recently, the younger voices?
I haven't, and the reason I haven't is that I've been trying to get my own work done, right? So I'm reading the memoirs and the pieces that I need for that. And I can say that in my country now, there are a number of books coming out by young ethnic Vietnamese Americans. So I had 2 American friends who showed up in town, and they gave me 2 books that are written by ethnic Vietnamese Americans. They're Americans, right? So, but they're of Vietnamese origin, and so it's a very it's their view of their society and these things, or they're looking back. It's a whole range of things.
But just by your sense, what do you think the young writers are interested in if they have to write something?
That I don't know. I'll know a whole lot more once we do this. I'll have a good
Once you read
sense,
the
I don't know, and I'm really curious about that, because part of what I've said for some years now, I have been not even interviewing, just sitting with and listening to stories from people older than I am, and I'm 83. So, and many of them have now passed on, and some of them close friends actually. And the stories, it's been interesting that stories have come out that 2 Vietnamese who've been friends for 30 years and shared an office didn't know about each other. Like how a couple met or whatever. And the dumb foreigner is asking you, right? And out comes this story, right? And in one case out came a whole suitcase full of letters, love letters, woo, right? So, and it's partly for what I say to them is I'm a foreigner. I don't know. I don't know. I'm too young in some cases, or I'm a foreigner, or I'm a woman, or I'm whatever. I don't know. And in some ways, I'm like the young generation of Vietnamese here in the country right now, because they also don't know. The difference is they're very busy in their lives.
Yeah.
Very busy in their lives, and they're not interested. And I'm just making that as an observation that I'm not condemning, because that's true the world over. The younger generation is busy building, those people are building their lives.
Yes.
And they're not interested in their parents' lives, maybe in the grandparents, but not. They're busy building their lives.
Yes.
That's what they should be doing, moving
Yes.
forward, right? They're not looking back. And that's what I can say to the elder. They're not. It's not their job to be interested anywhere in the world. Don't blame them. That's the way it is. They will be interested. They'll be interested when they're 60 years old. We'll all be gone.
Definitely.
I'll be gone. Right, we'll be gone. So we need to get it down now and get it on tape, videotape, or in
Writing.
books, or writing, or whatever. Get those stories down, because those little connections and pieces are your country's history.
Yes.
And otherwise, you end up with Neuschel. To speak for all, we did this, we did that, we did this, we did that. Boring. Not interesting. No details.
Mundane.
Mundane, right? What we want are, what were you doing? What were you doing? What were you doing? And,
The essence, the
you
distilled
know, and it's
of each.
in the details. It's all in the details. And when, you know, so I was a messenger. Well, how? Right?
Mm.
Well, in the market. Well, how? Well, I sat in the market, and the policeman came, and I had a map, and the policeman came, and I ate the map.
Detail.
Right? I ate the map. But I had already memorized it, so I could draw it. I ate it. Right? So I'm not going to, well, she didn't get arrested, right? She ate the map, right? It's in her brain, right? But, you know, you get all those little details, and you begin to see who were these people, and why? You know, and why was this happening? And that's in the stories, and that's what we now get from the younger generation. That's their lives. What's really important to them, right? And they will be interested in the stories of the past, but they aren't right now.
Yeah.
But they'll be glad to find them in libraries or on old tapes or whatever. You know, it's, oh, this is interesting. Oh, you mean my
Agree.
grandpa did this? Right?
Yeah, and I think that's true. Everyone is moving forward, busy in their own lives, and that's understandable. That's what everyone's doing. But maybe we just need this opportunity to just slow down and feel and think about the past. It's just like, you know, perhaps the only times when you listen to war stories or your grandparents' stories is during Tet. Is during the specific event, right? That catalyzes, that brings together this atmosphere so you can talk about it. And so, yeah, maybe that's exactly why I organized. I thought of this competition during Tet. Yeah, it's the opportunity for me to think about the heritage, and I want to spread that to everyone. You know, take this competition during this time of the year as this time to remember, to ask questions about the past, and really connect with the intergenerations, because that's how history is, you know, really enriched.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to, you know, seeing what people like. And these stories are pieces of work that your writers have sat down, or they were standing up, whatever, but they have given real thought to.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Writing is a thought process, and it comes out of our brains and out of our feelings and out of our experiences, and that's what's going to be crystallized here.
Yeah,
so it'll be very interesting.
I agree. I also really look forward to that. We'll send you this
All right.
really quickly.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
I'm a slow reader, but I'll read. And I'll be studying. I mean, it's
Always
good.
learning.
Yes, right. You know, and it's for me then, when I'm reading, I don't mind using Google Translate to look up words or something. Or at home, I've got a big, thick dictionary. Right behind me, you know, just like that, you know. But because that will give me more. I have Louis Fulton's dictionary. I have a whole bunch of dictionaries, right? Because, and when you're reading, you don't have to know every word.
Exactly.
I don't have to know every word, but I can, you know, it'll be very interesting.
Take time.
And it'll be a change, because I haven't been reading literature. I've been reading
That's great.
And translating memoirs. Right? And, so very different.
Yeah.
You know, this storyline, but it's not literary writing, and it's not fiction.
Yeah.
Right? It's reflective thinking.
Yeah, it's authentic voices.
But they're
authentic
authentic voices,
perspectives.
yeah.